Another idea associated with culture is the concept of ideology. Think of it also as a kind of construct. Ideology may look at promoting some sort of understanding of cause and effect. So it focuses on concepts and relationships. Take as a for example the idea the effect of Copernicus's statements on a perception in Europe at that time of what the universe was, or at least the solar system, never mind the universe. At that time, a Ptolemaic understanding of the universe believed that planets moved in spheres and that the center of the solar system was the Earth. Copernicus ends up pointing out that that doesn't make sense, and that to understand better the motions and the pathways of the objects in the skies, it meant that the sun was the center of the solar system and not the Earth. Well, this was a fairly radical concept. When you think about the ideas that were expressed by another thinker around the time of Copernicus, Galileo, his notion that Earth wasn't the center of the solar system was basically seen as religious heresy, and he had to recant his understanding of these things on pain of death. So the ideology can end up being something that can be quite powerful. But ideologies can also fail. Look what happened to the former nation of the Soviet Union. There you saw a form of socialism that attempted to embody the idea of communism as reflected in the works primarily of Karl Marx, but also of the revolutionary who went by the name of Vladimir Lenin. Much as it tried to accomplish its sort of goals, it failed. Then there's the idea of culture, which is one of being high and low, with the low culture perhaps being also considered pop culture. So think of the contrasts as between being art, like the art that's kept at the Rembrandt Museum in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and street graffiti, that because of the difference in terms of the materials being used, the time in which they are made, the content of these kinds of expression, that there would be a way in which there was so dramatic a difference as to suggest that neither of them really are their equals. If our particular culture is embedded in a classless society, which in fact we don't talk about whether there are classes, the case can also be made about the lack of discussion about culture in our society. For example, it wouldn't be that unusual to find that there's at least one class on our campus that talks about or incorporates the Harry Potter novels in some way. On the one hand, the argument would go that this is low culture because it was accessible to the masses, and even worse, ends up being the basis for a series of movies. But on the other hand, the argument might go that this is a superior kind of a culture because it is so well received, and that high culture may end up being something that is considered so valuable to a particular society. In looking at the distinctions between cultures, we might then end up finding ourselves in a situation where we want to study culture. In this particular instance, we may find contrasts. For example, we could end up finding cultural relativism, which is a way of noting that differences exist among cultures without necessarily suggesting that this is superior or inferior, so that that there may be a kind of level of comfort that can exist in an analysis between cultures. Excuse me.